Hi, my name is Amina Rashid, and I'm here to tell you a story that completely changed my life. This isn't just about what happens after death. It's about faith, truth, and discovering a love so profound that it turned my world upside down. Before I get into what happened to me, let me tell you a little bit about my life. I grew up in Greenhampton, Scotland, in a deeply religious Muslim family. Faith wasn't just something we practiced. It was who we were. From the time I was a little girl, my parents taught me to follow Islam with absolute devotion. I followed the 5 pillars of Islam faithfully. I prayed 5 times a day, fasted during Ramadan, gave zakat, charity, and even performed the Hajj pilgrimage twice. I felt proud of my faith and my dedication to it. At our local mosque, I was known as a teacher of Islamic studies. People often looked to me for guidance, and I took that responsibility seriously. But beneath the surface, I carried a secret burden, doubts I didn't dare voice. From the outside, I appeared to be a pillar of faith. But inside, I wrestled with questions that kept me awake at night. One of the biggest questions I struggled with was the idea of eternal punishment for non-Muslims. I knew Christians and atheists who were kind, compassionate, and selfless, people who lived lives of love and service. How could a merciful God condemn them to hell simply because they didn't follow Islam? Then there was the issue of women in Islamic law. Why were women treated as less than men in inheritance, testimony, and other rights? Why did God seem to favor men? I also struggled with some of the stories about Muhammad. There were verses and historical accounts that didn't sit right with me, moments where I questioned his motives. But every time these thoughts surfaced, I pushed them down, telling myself that faith was about submission, not understanding. Things came to a head after a heated argument with my sister Mina. Mina had started questioning Islam after reading historical accounts about Muhammad's life. She brought up things I didn't want to hear, things that made me uncomfortable. I dismissed her concerns as rebellion, but deep down, her words unsettled me. Fast forward to February 2017. It was a cold, overcast morning, and I was driving to Dublin for a work meeting. My thoughts were scattered. I was thinking about my family, my responsibilities, and Mina's latest challenge to my faith. As I drove along the D45 motorway, I passed a few churches. Seeing the congregants gathering for Sunday services, I felt a mix of pity and superiority. I thought to myself, they're sincere, but they're so misguided. One day, they'll see the truth of Islam. I was so caught up in my thoughts that I barely noticed the truck ahead of me. It was carrying steel pipes, and they didn't look secure. Before I could react, one of the pipes broke loose. Everything happened so fast. The pipe smashed through my windshield, narrowly missing my chest but causing me to lose control of the car. I remember the sound of screeching tires, the car flipping, and then silence. When I became aware again, I wasn't in my body. I was floating above the scene, watching everything unfold. I saw my car crumpled in the ditch, the shattered glass sparkling like diamonds in the sunlight. My body was slumped over in the driver's seat, lifeless. I saw people running toward the wreckage, their faces filled with shock and concern. The strange thing was, I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel pain. I felt peace. It was like I was watching a movie, detached from the chaos below. I noticed every detail with incredible clarity. The way the grass swayed in the breeze, the expression of panic on the bystanders' faces, even the sound of a bird chirping in the distance. It was all so vivid, so real. And then I felt it. A pull. In the distance, I saw a light. It wasn't like any light I'd ever seen before. It was warm and inviting, almost alive. As I focused on it, the light grew brighter and more intense. I felt an irresistible pull toward it, as if it were calling me. It wasn't forceful. It was gentle, like an invitation. I let myself be drawn toward the light, leaving behind the scene of the accident. As I moved closer, I entered a tunnel filled with colors that seemed to pulse and swirl. Blues, golds, and purples surrounded me, creating patterns that were both mesmerizing and comforting. The tunnel felt alive. It wasn't just a passage, it was an experience. The air hummed with a melody that resonated deep within me. It wasn't a song in the traditional sense, but it was music nonetheless, a harmony that filled me with peace and joy. When I emerged from the tunnel, I found myself in a place that words can barely describe. It was beautiful beyond imagination. The landscape was vibrant and alive, filled with colors more radiant than anything on earth. The grass seemed to glow, the trees shimmered, and the sky was a golden hue that sparkled with light. I felt a presence before I saw him. A presence so powerful, so overwhelming, that I knew instantly who it was. It was Jesus. When I first saw him, I was overwhelmed by his presence. It wasn't just that he was standing there. It was the way everything about him radiated love, peace, and authority. His light wasn't just around him. It poured out from him, filling the entire space with warmth and life. At first, I couldn't bring myself to move. I was rooted in place, not out of fear, but out of awe. He was unlike any depiction of Jesus I had ever seen. His eyes were the first thing I noticed, deep, compassionate, and filled with wisdom. They seemed to hold the weight of the world, yet were soft and gentle, as if he could see every part of me and still love me unconditionally. His presence felt familiar, like I had known him my whole life without realizing it. And as I stood there, something incredible happened. He opened his arms, and I felt an overwhelming pull to go to him. As I approached him, all my doubts, fears, and questions seemed to dissolve. When he embraced me, it was unlike any hug I'd ever received. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and all-encompassing. In that moment, I felt completely known. Every part of me, the good, the bad, the things I was proud of, and the things I was ashamed of, was laid bare before him. But instead of judgment, I felt pure, unconditional love. I started to cry, not out of sadness, but out of release. It was as if all the pain, guilt, and questions I had carried for years were being lifted off my shoulders. He spoke to me, but his voice wasn't just something I heard. It was something I felt. It resonated deep within me, filling every part of my being with truth and clarity. The first thing he said was simple, yet profound. "Amina, you are loved. You always have been, and you always will be." Hearing those words was like a balm to my soul. I hadn't realized how much I doubted my own worth, how much I had questioned whether I was truly enough. I asked him a question that had been on my mind for years. Why did you pray to God if you are God? He smiled gently, and his response was both simple and profound. He explained that when he walked the earth, his prayers were a way of aligning his human will with the divine will of the Father. Prayer, he said, is not just a request, it's a relationship. It's a way of connecting with God, of aligning our hearts with his, and of participating in his work. He said, prayer is how you come to know the Father's heart. It's not about ritual, it's about relationship. Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized that so much of my life had been focused on rituals, on doing things the right way, but I had missed the heart of what it meant to truly connect with God. Then, Jesus showed me something I wasn't prepared for, a review of my life. It was as if every moment of my existence was being played out before me, but it wasn't like watching a movie. I was reliving each moment, feeling the emotions I had felt at the time, but also experiencing the impact my actions had on others. One of the first scenes I saw was a moment of kindness I had completely forgotten about. Years ago, I had helped a neighbor carry her groceries inside on a rainy day. At the time, it felt insignificant, but in this review, I saw how much that simple act had meant to her. She had been going through a difficult time, and my small gesture had given her hope. But there were also moments that broke my heart. I saw times when I had been harsh with my words, moments when I had judged others instead of showing them love. One scene stood out vividly, a heated argument with my sister Mina. She had been questioning Islam, and instead of listening to her with compassion, I had ridiculed her, calling her a disgrace to our family. In the review, I felt her pain and the sense of isolation my words had caused. Through it all, Jesus was by my side. He didn't condemn me or make me feel ashamed. Instead, he gently helped me understand the consequences of my actions and the opportunities I had missed. Jesus then showed me something even more profound. He revealed how every action, no matter how small, creates ripples that affect the lives of others. It was like looking at a vast web of light, with each thread representing a person's life. Where those threads intersected, there were bursts of light, moments of connection, love, and impact. I saw how my choices had contributed to that web, both positively and negatively. Even small acts of kindness, like offering a smile or a kind word, sent ripples of light through the web. But moments of judgment or selfishness created ripples of darkness. He said, "Amina, your life is part of a greater story. Every choice you make matters. Choose love, and you will shine brighter than you can imagine." Finally, Jesus revealed the truth about Islam. This was the most difficult part of my experience, but it was also the most liberating. He showed me the origins of the religion I had followed so devoutly. I saw Muhammad receiving revelations, but they weren't from God as I had believed. Instead, they came from dark spiritual entities that had deceived him, and through him, billions of people. I also saw the historical Muhammad, not the idealized version I had been taught. I witnessed moments of violence, manipulation, and self-serving revelations. These were things I had ignored or rationalized for years, but now I couldn't look away. Jesus showed me that while many Muslims are sincere seekers of God, the system of Islam itself distorts the truth and keeps people from knowing him fully. After everything I had seen and felt, I didn't want to leave. The peace, the love, and the presence of Jesus were unlike anything I had ever experienced. It felt like I was finally home, the place I was always meant to be. I remember looking at him with tears in my eyes and saying, "Please don't send me back, I don't want to leave you." He smiled at me with such tenderness, but there was a seriousness in his voice as he said, "Amina, your time on earth isn't finished. You still have work to do." I didn't understand at first. What work? How could I possibly go back to the life I had left behind, knowing what I now knew? But Jesus explained that my experience wasn't just for me, it was meant to be shared. He said, "There are people waiting to hear your story. Through you, they will see my love and come to know the truth." I still hesitated. The idea of returning to my broken earthly body felt unbearable compared to the perfection and peace of where I was. I asked him, "How will I do this? How can I possibly make a difference?" His response was simple, but powerful. "You won't do it alone. I will be with you every step of the way." The moment Jesus said those words, I felt a pull, gentle but firm, drawing me away from him and back to the physical world. The transition was abrupt and jarring. One moment I was standing in his light filled with love and peace. The next I was slammed back into my body, and all the pain, chaos, and noise of the accident returned at once. I opened my eyes to the sound of paramedics shouting instructions. "We've got a pulse," one of them yelled. I could feel their hands on me, stabilizing my neck, checking my vitals, and preparing to transport me to the hospital. The pain was overwhelming. Sharp, stabbing pain in my chest and a throbbing ache in my head. But even through the agony, I felt a sense of peace that the paramedics couldn't see. I knew that I wasn't alone. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I closed my eyes and silently prayed, "Thank you, Jesus, for sending me back. I don't know how, but I'll do what you've asked of me." My physical recovery was long and difficult. I had suffered severe internal injuries, broken ribs, and a concussion from the accident. The doctors told me it was a miracle I had survived, let alone without any brain damage. I spent weeks in the hospital, undergoing surgeries and physical therapy. Each day was a challenge, but I held on to the memory of my encounter with Jesus. It gave me strength when I felt like giving up. But the hardest part wasn't the physical healing. It was figuring out how to share my experience with the people around me. I remember lying in that hospital bed, wondering how my family would react. How could I, a devout Muslim woman who had taught Islamic studies, tell them that I had encountered Jesus Christ and that everything I thought I knew about faith was wrong? The first person I told was my sister, Mina. She visited me in the hospital, and I could see the concern in her eyes. I hesitated at first, but then I thought about Jesus' words. There are people waiting to hear your story. So I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about the accident, the out-of-body experience, the tunnel of light, and my encounter with Jesus. I shared how he had shown me the truth about Islam and revealed the love of God in a way I had never known. To my surprise, Mina didn't look shocked. Instead, she started crying. She told me that she had been praying for years that I would come to know Jesus, but never thought it would happen like this. Encouraged by her reaction, I decided to tell my husband next. That conversation didn't go as well. He was furious, accusing me of betraying our family and our faith. He couldn't understand how I could turn my back on Islam after everything we had built our lives around. Over time, his anger turned into distance. Our relationship grew strained, and eventually, he left. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to endure, but even in the midst of that pain, I felt Jesus' presence comforting me. Today, my life looks completely different than it did before the accident. I've embraced Christianity and dedicated my life to sharing the truth of God's love with others. At first, it wasn't easy. Many people in my community turned their backs on me. I lost friends, faced criticism, and even received threats. But I also found a new community, believers who welcomed me with open arms and supported me in my journey. I've spoken at churches, written about my experience, and shared my testimony with anyone willing to listen. Every time I tell my story, I see how it touches people's hearts and helps them draw closer to God. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. God's love is real, and it's for everyone. It doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done, or what you believe. He is waiting for you with open arms. Jesus showed me that life is about so much more than rituals and rules. It's about relationship, it's about love, and it's about letting him guide you in truth and grace. Thank you for listening to my story. If it has touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please share it with someone who might need hope or encouragement. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts or answer any questions you have. Remember, you are loved, you are seen, and your life has a purpose. God bless you.